Ministries. And we want you to know, today we're announcing this space is getting repurposed in multiple different ways, and one of those is as the Northwest Atlanta Conference Center. Can I get a round of applause for that? Awesome. So today's summit is a combination of many events. The first event is going to be a news conference that'll be followed by an environmental planning roundtable discussion. Then we'll have an acknowledgement ceremony where everybody will get a chance to come on for a photo opportunity, but really be acknowledged for your participation. And then we'll end today with just some refreshments, networking, kind of a reception atmosphere. And really we wanted to make sure that anybody whose work schedule didn't allow them to be able to come, that at least they could catch everybody, network a little bit, find out from people, what they had missed. I want you all to know that today's summit is being broadcast as a live stream off of the complimentary offer of the Atlanta Video Network. So we are now live streaming on Facebook as we speak today. Thank you, Atlanta Video Network, we're very clear. We also invited our community television producers and those that are inside the university television stations to come here today as well. And I want you to know that all of the network stations this morning, Channel 2, Channel 11, Channel 46, Fox 5, all told me they had our releases. We were on their, what they call their day calendars, which means that if they chose to, they could come out and cover us. So I want you to know we're on their radar as well. Today will also be a presentation by a very special group that has come to us from Vancouver, Canada, called World Tree Technologies. And we're really blessed and fortunate for the gift that they are going to communicate to you today. So today is very special. And I want all of us to say 1, 2, 3, Happy World Environment Day on 3, okay? 1, 2, 3. Happy World Environment Day! All right, Atlanta. Many of you might know we're the only registered event here in the state of Georgia with the United Nations World Environment Day. So you are special. We want the world to be watching this conversation. We want you to share with the world what's there, that the world needs to know about what's happening here in Atlanta, not just for today, but for the next generation and the next. So I'd like to introduce our news conference speaker today. He's not unfamiliar to many of you. He ran as a mayoral candidate in the last mayoral election. He is the chairman of the neighborhood planning unit of this district, NPUJ, amongst other NPUs that are in this district. And he's here today as chairman of the Global Environment Network. Please welcome Mr. Al Bartel.
Yay, team. Like we said, I'm in South Georgia, right? Hey, how y'all doing? I like that. So welcome, 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 welcome. And I especially want to welcome the person with your name tag. So I want to give a few remarks, and then I'm going to take some questions from the press. So all of the press should just come up and sit right up here so that you can be in position to make sure you ask questions, and then we'll open it up to others who also want to ask questions. So my name is Al Bartel. I am the chairperson of Global Environmental Network. And the interest of the Global Environmental Network is to ensure that a concept called Think Globally, Act Locally is alive and well. So since 1974, the United Nations Environmental Center created the United Nations Environment Program and instituted something called the World Environment Day to recognize stakeholders, stewards, and leaders in the environmental movement throughout the world. As such, that day is June 5th of every year. And then the question becomes, what does that mean for the Southeast region of America? Well, that happened in 1974. 40 years later, just so happened that the Urban Waters Federal Partnership recognized the Pocket Creek Watershed Basin as one of 19 watershed basins across America that would empower residents and stakeholders to be able to communicate environmental data, collect environmental data, and distribute environmental data. And then in 2018, the United Nations Environmental Center designated that June 5th would be the World Environment Day to concentrate on marine plastics that fill our oceans. But those plastics don't start in our oceans. They start in the neighborhoods, communities, urban, suburban, and rural streams, rivers, and lakes, and they flow down to the ocean. And so in March of this year, the United States Senate Committee on the Environment launched a bipartisan piece of legislation labeled as the Carbon Reduction Initiative. Because the United Nations World Environment Strategy includes how do we impact and reduce the carbon footprint. The data shows that the largest contributors of air, land, and water pollution are urban centers around the world. The data also shows that the least involved in environmental solutions are urban leaders. So the question became, who, when, and where would public policy leaders take on establishing a platform so that urban leaders can be involved in the solutions? Many cities have what's called a citizen participation framework in public policy. In Atlanta, we call it the NPU system. So we felt that it would be useful to have an environmental planning summit to be able to reach out to neighborhood, community, faith, and small business leaders and NPUs to say that environmental planning is necessary, environmental planning is useful, and environmental planning is something that you deserve. So our Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, looked at the Pocket Creek watershed and began to consider that it would be useful to have an event to highlight that the focus and concentration would be in the Pocket Creek watershed. And on May 7th, she had a ribbon cutting ceremony for what's called the Pocket Creek Greenway. The question we have is, what does that mean for the people who live there in Pocket Creek watershed basin? What does that mean for people who have the historic preservation? What does that mean for people who are concerned about gentrification? What does that mean for the opportunity to build alliances and work together? It would be useful to have an environmental planning summit to start to get at the underpinning of those issues. And that's why this environmental summit was planned. And so the City Council considered that it would be useful to highlight this environmental summit and highlight our city's partnership with the United Nations. As such, the City Council to the City of Atlanta has delivered a proclamation recognizing this World Environment Day. And at this time, I will read the proclamation. And immediately after the proclamation is read, I'll be available for questions from the press corps. Proclamation. Atlanta City Council, in recognition of World Environment Day and the Environmental Planning Summit. Whereas World Environment Day, held June 5th, has been established by the United Nations since 1974 as a global environmental awareness platform for public outreach. It is widely celebrated in more than 100 countries each year. And whereas World Environment Day is above all the People's Day for doing something to take care of Earth's environment on the local, national, and global level. And whereas the Environmental Planning Summit on World Environment Day 2018 seeks to highlight this important day and acknowledge the environmental stakeholders in the city of Atlanta. And whereas the Atlanta City Council recognized that communities in northwest Atlanta are being impacted by the lightning speed of development in Atlanta's Proctor Creek watershed basin. And whereas this year's Environmental Planning Summit will host a news conference and roundtable discussion to discuss how, as environmental stakeholders, diverse leaders can use community engagement strategies in the City of Atlanta's Neighborhood Planning Unit framework. And whereas the Environmental Planning Summit will also highlight the opportunity for Northwest Atlanta's neighborhoods and communities to engage in environmental planning with other diverse environmental stakeholders using community-driven environmental data to address destructive gentrification, affordable housing, and education in the Proctor Creek watershed basin. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the members of the Atlanta City Council, on behalf of the citizens of Atlanta, do hereby proclaim this 5th day of June 2018 to be World Environment Day in the City of Atlanta. We stand with the United Nations' declared intention of encouraging worldwide awareness and action for the protection of the environment, and we proclaim the Environmental Planning Summit held on this day as a participation model for the global community of the 21st century. You should give yourselves a round of applause. At this time, I'll take questions from the press corps, and then if need be, we'll take some questions from the lobby.
Yes, Ron, so here, People TV. I'd like to ask you, how do you go about enlightening people that's in the community about the creek and water supply in the community, which a lot of them don't even have knowledge of? How do you, what is the education process to make people recognize that they have a jewel, not only a jewel to look at, but a necessity of life that need to be protected?
Sure. One of the ways that has been useful in enlightening community, and particularly educating community on particular processes, has been People TV. Many of the producers make available programs on People TV with the underpinning of educating the public and educating the community. So the more public access television, the more public access radio that we have would be useful. That's why it's necessary for us to advocate for the sustainability of public access television and public access radio. Additionally, it would be useful for us to increase support and budget the NPU system, to make the NPU system fair and equitable, to increase opportunities that would include neighborhood, community, faith, and small business leadership, and to make sure the NPU system is not exclusive. The people who are elected to as NPU officers don't get to use personal privilege to pick who they want to include in meetings, who they exclude from meetings. It is within that kind of context that we can expand the enlightenment of people about the environmental movement and environmental justice, and include the education phenomenon to have people be able to build a capacity to communicate environmental data, collect environmental data, and distribute environmental data.
Carrie Williams, Southeast Region News. I wanted to ask you, in your release, you speak about the growing possibility of federal state funding delays for Proctor Creek environmental restoration efforts. And I know you've already mentioned the Urban Waters Federal Partnership Proctor Creek's involved in. Could you please elaborate on that?
Sure. When the Urban Waters Federal Partnership was established, it was established under President Obama's administration. We've now had a change in administration. The environmental policy of the current administration regarding environmental justice has been questioned. And the question becomes, now that we have a new administration in Washington, D.C., which is a Republican administration, we currently have a Republican administration in Georgia, we have an election in November. But we definitely have a Democratic administration in the city of Atlanta. So if the Republicans are going to impact the environment, they're going to want to take the leadership role on it. And there is advantages and liabilities to that reference point. If the Democrats take on funding environmental justice and environmental movements, they're going to want to take the lion's share of credit, and there's advantages and disadvantages to that. So people like the Proctor Creek watershed basin, we get caught in a crossfire. We get manipulated. We get picked off, and our leadership gets to be undermined. So what we have to do in the Proctor Creek watershed basin is come together with a united one voice, that all of us stand shoulder to shoulder, so that regardless of the Democrats or the Republicans are in a reference point for making funding available, with one voice and a relationship to data, we can let the data speak for itself. That's the most advantageous position we can be in, because the political waters are excruciatingly uncertain.
I just want to acknowledge Proctor Creek Ambassador Daryl Haddock is here, and he had a question, but
Sure.
I'm happy to.
Well, we can go to Darrell, and then we can come back to the president.
Thank you, Al, and thank you for pulling this together. Excuse me, my name is Darrell Haddock, and I'm the Urban Waters Proctor Creek Ambassador. And my question is, could you explain a little bit more about how civic engagement through the MPUs will use this United Nations framework? Because you mentioned at least 4 kind of challenges. You mentioned affordable housing, gentrification, plastics reduction, and carbon reduction. So how does it, utilizing a United Nations framework within the NPU process, get us to some just outcomes with respect to at least those 4?
Many of you have just spent countless numbers of hours, blood, sweat, and tears being activists, communicating about what's working and what's not working as activists, looking at how the impact of communities is included or dismantled, looking at the role of development in equitable and affordable housing, looking at the role of transportation, looking at the role of education, looking at the role of small businesses, and looking at the role of environmental processes, environmental activism, and environmental justice. But all of that is activism and advocacy. It does not have a guaranteed reference point in public policy. So in the 1970s, there was a system set up that would have citizens across America have a guaranteed role in public policy management. Different mayors took on making that solid and reliable. Mayor Maynard Holbrook Jackson established the neighborhood planning unit system here in Atlanta. Tom Bradley established one out of Los Angeles. Mayor Marion Barry established one in Washington, D.C. Mayor Richard Arrington did one in Birmingham. Mayor Coleman Young in Detroit.
Need a chair?
And then in Cleveland and some other places. So in Atlanta, we have a neighborhood planning unit system. Everything that comes to an NPU is registered in the official record of public policy in the city of Atlanta. So you have committees in the NPU that are designed to communicate that kind of data, collect that kind of data, and distribute that kind of data. We know ourselves as activists and public policy leaders in the housing conversation, transportation conversation, the educational conversation. We don't necessarily know ourselves as public policy leaders in the environmental conversation. So it would be useful for neighborhood planning units, just like they're committed to have a zoning committee, a housing committee, and an education committee, to also have an environmental committee. And that would register our communication in the official public policy communication of the city of Atlanta. We can get committees of the city council to call up that legislation, to build partnerships in the same way they do for other kind of issues throughout the city. Question?
Yeah, Carrie Williams, Southeast Region News. We speak about, and in the proclamation, the lightning speed of development
Yes.
here in the Quantum Creek watershed basin, and the language for the Urban Waters Federal Partnership is about the revitalization, the environmental revitalization of urban waters,
Sure.
such that the communities in that watershed get to benefit economically from that revitalization.
Right.
Not with the threat of, the delays that might come out of, we talked about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers study, and the impact of that study being delayed, the impact of that recommendations not getting appropriated, more and more delays about the revitalization, while all this development is going forward
Right.
without the community getting to benefit. Just speak a little bit about the impact of that scenario, because that's getting played out in lots of other places, not just Atlanta.
Sure. Well, the major impact is caused by a particular phenomenon called neighborhood, community, faith, and small business leaders not having a seat at the table to the same degree as lobbyists, specialist groups, and corporations. The phenomenon of lobbyist specialist groups and corporations have in many instances hijacked public policy. And the reference point for us is, how do we begin to look at having community have a seat at the table during rapid advances of development? And so it starts with community input reference points like this one. As many of you know, there's a strong environmental contingent that meets over in Piedmont Park. Piedmont Park area just got a $100 million commitment to expand Piedmont Park. They have all kinds of roundtable discussions, development sessions, and so forth. None of that happens over here on the west side. So we're clear. Some of us say that it's lined up on Northside Drive. Somebody's waiting for the starter pistol to pop, and it's going to come from Northside Drive out to 285. And most of us are going to have to be pronouncing one word as a place to live, and that's called Douglas County, because we're not going to be able to afford to live here. The reference point for combating that is for us as a community to come together, have our own planning summits, have our own ideas, and translate the upset that we have, translate the disappointment that we have, translate the angst that we have into reliable, sustainable public policy. Expertise is in this room to do that. The question has been, who's going to call forth one of these? that's why we took on the initiative to call for this kind of planning summit. And Ron, you may have had a follow-up question on your communication.
Christian Baptist Church. I was at Christian Baptist Church yesterday, and an initiative group that's on East Street was moderating a program. Okay, yeah, okay. So, one thing that he challenged the panel, which Ms. Bottom, Mayor Bottom was on,
Sure.
McGowan of the Beltline,
Yeah.
and a few. He challenged them to really make the engagement significant, because much of the engagement that occurred after they do the charrettes and, you know, and the greeting, meet and all that, what is decided on the list, it does not resemble
Right.
what the community concerns were, number one, and it lacks equity. So when we looking at the plastic pollution of the rivers and the creeks,
Yeah.
and you know, and that's one of the starting places, but it starts on the cement asphalt streets.
Exactly.
And we have schools there, we have housing there, we have people there, we have advocates like Daryl,
Yeah.
who has been advocating, but there has not been a commitment to equity as far as giving attention and resources.
Exactly.
So I do believe that if we would come together and consciously present this emergency situation that the world is seeing,
Right.
that we can get it, but how do we get to just talking about real engagement to a mayor who have a big team around her
Right.
to get the message that it have to be unfolded with real resources?
Exactly. One of the things that we have is a lot of activism, a lot of committed people, a lot of knowledgeable people. Now, the barriers to having that translate into public policy are significant and entrenched. It's because community-based public policy is not mandated by government leadership. It's time for us to ask our mayor and our city council to mandate community-based public policy, to deny permits, to deny the funding of contracts, to deny the funding of programs until there is a mandated public policy communication that is accepted from neighborhood, community, faith, and small business. So what you're pointing to is that the public policy process in our city for citizens and community is not a mandated process. That means they don't have to have it. So we now have to come together and work together to get a mandated public policy statute, a mandated public policy ordinance in the city of Atlanta that mandates that contracts, projects, programs that impact our communities. There's a mandate that our communication gets translated into public policy before any of the funding or any of the decisions are being made. That's only going to happen if we come together like we are in this room.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Abartel, for setting this today. And truly, I believe, I'm Larry Hill, pastor here. I believe that this day did not just start this morning when all of us checked our agendas and see what meetings we were going to take. But it actually started about 10, 12 years ago when the government, the city government, decided to close and to shut down public housing in Northwest Atlanta, removing approximately 10,000 residents within a 5 to 7 miles radius. And what that done was kill all the black, many of the, not all, many of the black businesses, many of the black churches, many of the small businesses in this area. And so I'm happy today that you taking the initiative to make this a reality, and we're getting on board. So I represent two bodies. Number one, the small businesses, churches, faith-based, but about 20 pastors who are standing with you, toe-to-toe, shoulder-to-shoulders, that we want justice in this area. So my question is, how does this Environment Day relates to, as Brother Darrell has already stated, how does the Environment Day relate, and what can we do moving forward to make sure that Northwest Atlanta, Bankhead, Dunley, Hollowell receives its fair share of the Atlanta prosperity? We can't close any more churches.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you definitely respond to that. So let me respond to your question, and then Carrie, Myrna Clayton had a similar question back in the back. And that is, it's the same situation. The closest thing we came to a mandated public policy for small businesses was called contract set-aside. So in the quote-unquote early days of affirmative action, by the gray in my beard, I'm sure I'm decades older than anybody else in the room. So there was a concentrated effort to say that 25%, 30% of contracting, as well as the business reference point for economies of scale, be made available as a mandate for small businesses. But that was largely a political commitment and not a public policy mandate. So as politics have changed, that commitment has subsided. One of the most egregious processes in place was the closing of those housing projects without a mandate in place to take care of the residents, the businesses, and the churches that were impacted by that. That was in the days of the quote-unquote housing movement. So now there's this environmental movement coming along. And those of us who are watching the data are beginning to consider that the same disadvantaged populations are going to be impacted. And why am I saying that? Most of us who live here in the Southeast region, we know this is a quote-unquote green area. Trees, rivers, lakes, streams, and for us, creeks. Well, the larger economic decision-making process now is taking those creeks and establishing them as the catalyst for multi-billion-dollar economic development. You got a stream next to you, you can be guaranteed that a multi-billion-dollar economic development is coming to your neighborhood. So some of us who just begin to find out about Proctor Creek, you being asked the question, who is Proctor and who told him to put a creek in my backyard in the first place? And so it begins to put on display these kind of economic development runaway strategies, and there's no mandate in place for small business development. So we now have to go back to the table and extract that kind of mandate for public policy. If they separate us, it's not going to happen. If they pick us off, it's not going to happen. If they pit small business leaders against faith leaders, not going to happen. If they pit neighborhood leaders against community leaders, not going to happen. So the question becomes, who's going to have the quote-unquote courage to put together an environmental summit that's not down at the Marriott Conference Center? Who's going to have the courage to put together an environmental summit that's not located in the heart of Georgia Tech? Who's going to have the courage to say that this building could be made available as a community resource and have the environmental summit in this building? So when we designed this, we designed it to be broadcasted. This is more of a taping section than a public activity gathering so that we can get on the record calling for mandated public policy.
Thank you, Al. My name is Myrna Clayton, community resident of the city of Atlanta, longtime resident, and involved in a number of initiatives throughout the city and throughout the world. I've got two questions. One, you mentioned process. And so I'm just asking, what is the process to get mandated public policy? You know, me,
Sure.
let's cut to the chase.
Sure.
How do we do it? And so the question, the process that you're proposing
Sure.
to get to mandated public policy for community involvement and small business development in city initiatives for our voted in officials.
Okay.
And are you suggesting that be the NPUs? So that's question one. And then question two, how can funds be made available from our city's Office of Resilience?
Sure.
Since that's supposed to be an environmental initiative through the city, then how can those funds, because I know that they are from the Rockefeller Foundation, I know that they're supposed to be for environmental stuff.
Right.
So how can those funds be allocated or requested for this particular purpose? Since they're
Okay.
doing things on the west side already,
Okay.
then why can't that be done? So,
Sure.
my two questions.
Sure. Well, it has to be a parallel strategy, so to speak. That means two avenues going on at the same time. And yes, we're saying that the NPU is the only official citizens-based public policy process in the city. So that process is available for us to have all of our communication on record. That way we can call up the process for the city council and call up the process for the mayor because the NPU has that authority. And what do I mean by parallel strategies? For the most part in America, we've gone through 4 public policy ages in our nation. The first age was the age of agriculture, where we interacted with our live, work, play, worship by our relationship with nature and agriculture and what that gave to us. Then we moved into the industrial era. Large smokestacks of iron and steel, thousands of workers, thousands of resources concentrated. Then we moved into the information age. Large buildings with mainframe computers on every floor. But now we're in what's called the communications age, where we measure our effectiveness by what we communicate. In the southeast region of the nation, we didn't have the large smokestacks of industry. So we didn't have the industrial matrix, nor did we had the information age. We were snatched out of the agricultural age and slammed into the communications age. So that sets up 2 reference points. Reference point number 1 is, in the southeast region and in our neighborhoods and communities, our challenge is our relationship to data. Our challenge is our relationship to data. So we have to work hard at resolving our challenges to our relationship to data, because the money follows the data. The Office of Resiliency was set up with foundations from around the country to look at the relationship to data. So how do we do that? One of the things that we here at the Environmental Planning Summit, that's why we called it an Environmental Planning Summit, so that we can begin to look at what is the relationship of a community leader to data. That's different than a faith leader, different than a small business leader, and different than a neighborhood leader. So I want us to have a series of these kinds of forums so that we can begin to examine our relationship to data, because the money follows the data. Ms. Smith?
Oh, I'll pass it on. I'm sorry. This is Darryl.
I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned the parallel
Yes,
kind of binary way that we can relate to data.
right,
I want to go back to how the United Nations framework
sure,
can fit in with the NPU model, because I would suggest that, you know, those of us in the city are knowledgeable about the NPU process. We're not so aware of the United Nations framework or how we integrate the United Nations framework into this municipal process. So could you speak a little bit
Sure.
about how you feel as though
yeah.
we can use one to benefit the other?
Yeah. Many of us, you know, our relationship to the United Nations is speaking on behalf of, working on behalf of disadvantaged third world populations around the globe. That the massive disadvantages are perpetuated by government. And those massive disadvantages that are perpetuated by government needed to have another reference point for communication. And the United Nations arose out of that theory, that government is perpetuating massive disadvantages in nations. And therefore, the United Nations is a reference point for people to have a redress when their disadvantages are perpetuated by government. Normally, in America, we don't think about ourselves as third world countries. But what Darryl is pointing to is, it is now time to consider that the massive disadvantages in our neighborhoods and our communities are perpetuated by government. If we consider that, then the United Nations becomes a reference point for our participation, our involvement, and our partnership. So rather than just take that on face value, I decided to test it. So I knew that here in the Pocket Creek watershed basin, we had an opportunity to be able to reduce our challenges to data. But we also know that our city government, our state government, and our federal government, when we look around, we haven't seen the kind of on-the-ground commitment that we want. So when other nations see that, they go to the United Nations. So the United Nations has 6 regional offices around the world. The regional office for North America is located in Washington, D.C. North America involves the United States and Canada. So I went and set up a meeting with the regional office, and they talked about the most difficult challenges that they face is getting urban leaders, particularly in the South, to recognize, participate, and partner up with the United Nations. Nobody comes to them, and they don't have the manpower to reach out. So I'm saying that when we take on the United Nations as a partner, it opens us up to resources, information, and data that we don't currently have. And that's why when we move to the roundtable discussion, we have a partnership from Vancouver, Canada, is going to talk to us about things that we should have already known. Other governments know about it, but we don't. So what I'm saying to you, Darryl, is the United Nations has been open for us to build those kind of partnerships. But because we don't think of ourselves as a third world country, we don't go to them. I think it's now time for us as neighborhood, community-based, and small business leaders to rethink our strategy and environment and benefit from the United Nations relationship to building our community capacity for data so that we can impact our own city government, county government, state government, and federal government. Yes, my sister.
Good afternoon, Gwen Smith. First of all, I'd like to say thank you
Sure.
for convening this summit this afternoon. I want to also say that you were right. Pitting one group against another will not help us find solutions to the issues that exist in our community. And I also want to state that there is data being collected, environmental and health data, with the Donald Lee Hollowell land reuse pilot we're using the ATSDR toolkit to collect data here in Northwest Atlanta. And we are focusing on the area of Donald Lee Hollowell from H.E. Holmes, from James Jackson down to Bolton,
Right.
and all the way over to 285,
Right.
to look at the brownfields,
Right.
where they are, and specifically focusing on how redevelopment impacts health. And so partnering in this way is important, and this summit is a good way to help make that happen and to share data, because you're right, without the data, you can't do anything. And I want to say that this toolkit model, federal agencies here in the United States do have some resources to help us collect that data. How can you see strengthening the message by reaching out to communities that have not been included thus far?
Sure.
For example, Proctor Creek has a lot of funding federally.
Right.
The United Nations is looking at the Proctor Creek watershed. The map that we see for this meeting maps that area out. What we have to understand is that environmental challenges do not know borders. So those are political borders that we're looking at. And to the left of the map that you see is Collier Heights, 5,600 plus residents that are impacted by everything on Donald Lee Hollowell, all the way up to H.E. Holmes. There are many brownfields and contamination that impact all the residents. But all the money is in reference to Proctor Creek. Sandy Creek is where Donald Lee Hollowell was located. But all the decisions for the development impacts our community. And so I just want to let you know that the toolkit addresses some of the issues that you were talking about. It brings municipalities, public health, community leaders, environmental and planning professionals together at the beginning of the development process, not when you get to the NPU and someone from the development table comes and says, can you approve this? And so, yes, let's collaborate. And again, the question was, how can you see strengthening the message by reaching out to communities that have not been included thus far?
Let's strengthen the message by getting the reference point out to community and how that reference point impacts them. One of the largest reference points for development that includes public and private funding is brownfields. So brownfield is an area that has been contaminated for one reason or another. It's not green, but it's brown, the color. It's a color-coded system. It talks about contaminated areas that can be interacted with and redesigned to be multi-million or billion-dollar economic development initiatives. How many of y'all know where Atlantic Station is? Did you know that Atlantic Station is one of the most contaminated brownfields of the industrial maintenance? So like the sister said, we got brownfields all over the west side. And the data is being gathered on them to be multi-million-dollar economic development initiatives. Our communities are not getting that data. And if it is getting it, it gets it because they're trying to launch a large-scale economic development initiative. So, the message has to include not just having activists deliver communication, but building the capacity of activists to use data. Normally, our messages is about voicing the upset. The environmental justice community has just extraordinary mastery of voicing the upset. We now must partner up with the environmental justice community and build our capacity to communicate data. Now with that, it's 2:00. The reference point for communicating environmental data, the reference point for the United Nations and our global partners. There is an environmental data reference point that is used to decrease the carbon footprint. So we've got a presentation for you today about an environmental initiative to decrease the carbon footprint that will would be useful in watershed basins around Metro. The sister was saying that all the attention is being focused on Crockett Creek. What about Utah Creek? What about Sandy Creek? Why didn't she get the same kind of funding that the Office of Resiliency made available and other philanthropic folks made available? Why couldn't she get the exact same kind of funding with Utah Creek, Sandy Creek, and other neighborhoods and communities? It's because the marketing strategy for the current multi-trillion-dollar economies is now an environmental catalyst. We, the city of Atlanta, has been picked as a global destination. And the access point for it is Crockett Creek. So unless we come together and organize ourselves around data, then we don't have a snowball's chance in South Georgia of being able to come up with reliable, sustainable public policy. So I want to give you all an opportunity to look at a current model that's in place. One of the most sustainable green areas in North America, some say the world, is Vancouver. And I have asked them to come here and share that model with us and how they arrived at it and how it can impact not just the Crockett Creek watershed basin, but other places throughout Georgia and the southeast region of the nation. So they're going to make about a 15, 20-minute video, and then they're going to talk a little bit about how that came together. And then we want to either take a break or continue our roundtable discussion about how we're going to do some next steps. So I'm going to, yes.
Yes, I had a question about.
Well, I would love to answer your question, but it's already 2 o'clock, and I promised them that I'd have them start making a presentation at 2 o'clock. Now, when we come back, you got to make sure that yours is one of the first questions that we answer. So I want to bring out World Tree Technologies. World Tree Technologies began to consider how we can turn it off. There you go. World Tree Technologies began to consider how do we reduce the carbon footprint. So how many of you know how many tons of carbon your human body and the things you buy and the things you use produce? That's the kind of data that we don't have. How many of you know about what kind of trees can be grown that reduces, like one tree can reduce so much of the carbon footprint that we have in the world? It would be useful if we had that kind of data. So I want to invite up World Tree Technologies to introduce themselves to you while the projector is being set up so that we can have the presentation, start our conversation about how we relate to environmental data. So just introduce yourself and let everybody know. Because help out, right? So that's what I just myself. They've been trying to teach me homegrown narrative for a while.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Nada. I think it's time to turn the lights off and then we can get the projector and the picture on the screen. You know, I'd like to.
You gotta watch out for the molecules right there. Step in front of the,
I think I'd like to. First of all, it's just a real pleasure to be in Georgia. There's something very special, very unique about Georgia for me personally, and also for our company, World Tree. We're a Canadian-based company, and It's an honor to travel, and I've been traveling through Georgia quite a bit with our program in the southeast, and it's great to be here. I'm a little bit, I should say, in shock over what I've just learned today and what's happening and what gives me the right to stand in front of a group of people from Canada, and this is your state, your country, and what do I have to offer that would make a difference to you. So I'm an environmental activist, and I'm going to share with you, as soon as I get this working, need a little bit more light off, I think, than we can get. We're going to work on that. Oh, that's a little dark.
One more out. There.
Is that seeable?
See it now.
Okay. All right. I'm going to share some. I'm an ordinary person that lives in Canada. I have 4 children. While I was raising my children, I fostered over 50 children because I love children. And I love the planet that I'm going to leave them when it's my time to go. I'm clear that 50 years from now, most of us will be gone. And the activists in the room are here because you care about your children's future and their future. And it makes a difference what we do today for our children's future tomorrow. It's a privilege to be with World Tree and to work with what we have and the contribution we're making not only to North America, Canada, and South America, but other countries around the world where we can really take down the carbon that's happening and causing a lot of climate change and global issues that way. It's an incredible program. I'm passionate to share it with you, and there's a contribution piece that can happen for everyone in this room as well. So I'm going to get started. World Tree Technology was incorporated in 2002. We have got the great pleasure of the founder and CEO of World Tree, who started that company in 2002, Ms. Wendy Burton. She's also going to answer any questions you have later. And I'm just going to start the PowerPoint presentation with you. And I think I'm going to come this way. Let's see. You know, as Canadians, we're quite friendly, and but I'll tell you what, the hospitality and love and connection of the farmers in Georgia have been amazing, and it's been lovely to spend time with our families, and our rural families, and our farmland and our cities in Georgia, and we just feel really welcome to come here to this program with you. Al Bartel is an environmental activist, and so am I, and I found the definition of what an environmental activist is, and it's a person who advocates for or works towards practicing the natural or protecting the natural environment from destruction or pollution. And literally that's the stand that World Tree is today. We all know that leaves are the lungs of our planet. What we breathe in, trees breathe out. Trees capture more carbon than any other. God made trees to capture carbon and give us oxygen. We may think we're brilliant, but we don't know how to make oxygen, and trees do. This is a really, really beautiful example of what. However, we have a problem. The demand for wood will double by 2020. We are cutting down at an alarming rate forests and ecosystems for the demand for lumber. Statistics show a trend for timber shortages, and yet the demand is very high. In British Columbia, this is an 800-year-old fir tree that just got cut down for the purposes of the timber. Heartbreaking in the month of May. The problem is that trees take a very long time to grow to capture all that carbon. You know the growth rings on a tree will show you how old the tree is. I have a 35-year-old fir tree over on the side table and a 5-year-old empress tree that was cut like a pie shape that you can see what our particular tree. What I'd like to say here is we've got a particular tree inside World Tree that really makes a difference that Al mentioned around that. By the way, Al, thank you very much for having us come and do a presentation today. It's wonderful, thank you. So one of the problem is trees take a long time to grow. The destruction of our forests, the soil erosion is depleted, reduces resilience to climate change. The more trees we take down, the more trouble we get into. It's like we've had a big party on our planet, and we've got to clean up the mess because Mother Nature and Father Time are on their way home, and we're in trouble. There's just so much that's happening with the destruction of our forests. We have a solution at World Tree, and our particular solution is called the Empress Splendor tree. This particular tree, the genus name of it is Paulownia. It has not been genetically modified or engineered in any way. This is a little tiny tree that's 3-4 weeks old. Within 6 months, the big leaves captures 11 times more carbon than any other tree on the planet. And within 10 years, there's marketable timber. A $3 plant gets turned into an $800 tree worth of lumber. The other thing that's unique about this tree is that it prefers to be farmed for timber. The farming of timber really protects rainforests and ecosystems from the destruction. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. It's officially amazing. You can find it in the Guinness Book of World Records. It grows to maturity for harvesting within 10 years. It has a valuable lightweight hardwood. It has a high strength to weight ratio. It's not been genetically modified or invasive, and it sequesters 11 times more carbon than any other tree on the planet. The Empress Tree Investment, you can actually invest in this program for $2,000. World Tree will plant an acre of trees on your behalf with a farmer. And then what we do with that is we support the farmers by giving them the trees for free. We educate them, we train them, we show them how to plant the trees, what that looks like, and within 10 years we bring the buyer to the program. And then we split the profits with everyone. So the farmers, they've lovingly done all the work and provided us with the growth of this tree on their farmland, and they get 50% of the profits. The other profit comes into World Tree, and we split that 25% to our investors and 25% to World Tree. You can also offset your personal carbon footprint with planting 1 acre of tree for the next 50 years. We're going to talk a little bit more about your carbon footprint and the difference that also makes. This is a little bit of our World Tree. We have the program. It's like a partnership between World Tree, farmers, and investors. So World Tree provides the genostock for the tree, we provide the expertise, and we provide the buyers for the lumber. The farmers, they provide their land and their maintenance and their skills and their knowledge. And our investors provide resources to plant the acre of trees. Does that make sense? Was it here? Within 10 years, we harvest this lumber. What happened there? 10 years, we harvest and sell the lumber. And the lumber is used for a wide variety of applications. You get a copy of our business cards. They're veneered, very thin. They're made out of the actual wood of the tree. It makes beautiful crown moldings, veneers, furniture, guitars. Fender is made Telecaster, beautiful guitars out of the lumber. Surfboards, paddleboards, finishing wood. There's a lot of beautiful products made from Empress wood. And how the investment work is, if we sold the lumber for $3 a board foot, 1 acre of trees would produce $90,000 worth of lumber. Every acre of Empress trees that are planted and grown in the ground will provide 30,000 board feet of lumber per acre. And if we sell that at $3 a board foot, which is quite low for a hardwood tree, it's a lightweight hardwood tree, $90,000 per board foot, or $7 a board foot, up to $14 a board foot. When we sold the lumber to Fender quite a few years ago, they paid $10.66 a board foot. So I just want you to know there are companies that pay $7, $8, $9 a board foot for this particular wood. It's premium. Now this is the program. We take 50% of the profits goes to the farmer, 25% to World Tree, and 25% to our investors. You know, as a security, we just launched this investment program into the U.S. We've had it happening in Canada since 2015. Even though World Tree was incorporated in 2002, and we were a tree selling company for this tree, we actually became a security and sold this program as an investment to Canadians. And a lot of Canadians have said, I'm really interested in people planting trees to clean up carbon and protect old growth forests so they're not taking it for the hardwood. And we just launched it just last month in the US, so US citizens have the opportunity to participate with it. And we have what's called a private placement memorandum, which allows investors to participate in this offering. We also manage risks. You know, one of the risks that we have because of climate change is exactly that. Farmers are experiencing floods and storms and more hurricanes and more damage done to farmland than in the past because of what climate change has done. And how we manage that risk is we do a many eggs and many baskets approach. So if an investor buys an acre of trees, we plant one tree with all of the farmers that we have, all in the southern US, in Canada, and right now in Costa Rica. So it's diversified your particular portfolio where the trees are being planted. One thing, the reason why we're here today, because the home of this particular tree loves Georgia a lot. And we have a lot of farmers in Georgia already planting and growing this tree. I'm going to show you some pictures of farmers in Georgia soon that have done that. Here's the southern eastern U.S. where we're planting already on existing farmlands. A lot of trees are being intercropped in Costa Rica with coffee bean growers, mountaintop. And there is one farm in Canada that's a semi-tropical opportunity for this tree to grow on Vancouver Island in Canada. And by the way, that's the only place it can grow for timber in Canada itself. Here's a picture of all our farmers that are currently growing, have grown, and we're ready to we visit every farmer every year. We meet them face to face and give them an opportunity to meet us and get educated with this particular tree that's going into the ground and the difference it makes. Go here. The investment highlights is open to non-accredited investor. You get to diversify your financial portfolio by investing in it. Empress Splendor is the fastest growing tree in the world. You downside risk mitigated by dispersed plantations, and the management team that supports World Tree has over 30 years experience in this particular program. That's the minimum investment is $2,000 US. That's $1 a share, and it's a hold for 10 years. We'll answer those questions after. So the impact highlights for the World Tree Carbon Offset Program is that it sequesters more carbon than any other tree on the planet. It's a sustainable crop and will protect an old growth forest. Trees are non-invasive, non-genetically modified, and regrows after harvest. And it supports the farming communities. And it's a woman-led company. What I want to say about supporting farming communities, most of our farmers that are planting these trees are planting it on fallow land or land that's no longer growing food. When Empress trees are put in the ground, it puts some nitrogen, the nitrogen enriching root system, and farmers will intercrop and grow other products underneath the canopy of this tree once it's matured. Those big leaves have a lot of nitrogen and protein, and when they decay, they bring healthy nutrition back into the soil, and it's making a difference by enhancing farmland that wasn't able to grow anything on it. Pine trees, when you take them down, you can't grow anything, you can grow Empress trees there. Tobacco, when it comes off the land, you can't grow other crops on it. This particular tree, you can. So we're going to talk about a little bit about what's our personal carbon footprint. Everyone in the room has a carbon footprint, whether you want one or not. Your cell phone, the food you're eating, the clothes you're wearing, the building we're in, we all have a carbon footprint. And in North America, does anyone know what an average North American carbon footprint would look like? What that number is? I didn't know either until World Tree did the research on this and actually shared. But it's 20 tons of carbon every year is your personal carbon footprint. You know, when our directors got together and we're looking, what does 20 tons of carbon actually look like? It's actually a weight. And we looked at, it would be like having 3 elephants in the room with me at one time for this year. So you can imagine if everyone had 3 elephants in this room with us, and that's what your carbon footprint is like, you know, we really want to talk about the elephant in the room. We can do initiative. I mean, it's awesome that we're going to look at alternative things to not create as much carbon as we're doing through solar and wind. But what about the existing? If we stopped polluting today, we cannot draw down fast enough the existing carbon that's on our planet right now. It's impacting us in a very negative way. We're in a lot of trouble. The only way to do it, our oceans are filled up from drawing down carbon. The only other way is to plant something that can sequester a lot of trees, a lot of carbon, and do a lot of it right away. Trees make a difference for doing this, and particularly Empress trees. 1 acre of Empress trees can sequester over 1,000 tons of carbon within 10 years. So I'm 50 years old, 56 years old, and if you want to, I can divide that by 20. So 56 years old times 20 tons of carbon a year for my personal carbon footprint. 1 acre of trees will take care of that. And I want you to know I've purchased a lot more than 1 acre of trees. So it's a really beautiful way to clean up your personal carbon footprint and make a difference for your family and your children and your companies at the same time. So this is our World Tree family. What I want you to know about this particular tree is that Empress trees have been growing down in the southern US since the early 1800s. And this is some pictures of our World Tree family that are growing already Empress trees in Georgia. We have a nursery in Alabama that ships the trees from Alabama to all of our southern growers in Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, and Georgia to our existing farmers. More pictures of our farmers here in Georgia. I also bought a farm on Vancouver Island because I wanted to see the trees in the ground, and I planted 10 acres of Empress trees myself. And we'll be planting another 5 acres this year as a farmer as well. And this little girl on the left is my granddaughter Bella, and she helped plant the trees in the ground. And all their little families here are growing trees in the US. There's a little video of my farm in Canada where we got a group of investors that actually bought the acres of trees and then came to the farm and helped plant, because they just wanted to be in the ground and planting the trees. A short little video. And we gave them World Tree t-shirts so that it was their participation in putting trees in the ground. And if you're really special, you can have the founder and CEO of World Tree come and help you plant the trees too. She'll tell you where to put the tree in the hole in the ground. Some more of our farmers from a little tiny bare root to within 3 months and within 2 years, that's a tree on the left, just around in the neighboring state. Our farmers in Costa Rica did your crop with their coffee beans. I know it's really difficult to see these pictures, it's not that clear, so I'm just going to go through these really quickly. What's really important to me in this next picture is this picture right here. My hero is Jimmy Carter, and he's been a hero of mine for many years. When he came to Canada for Canada's 150th birthday to Edmonton, I went and built houses with him for a week while he was in Edmonton. Jimmy Carter, for over 35 years, has had a 15-acre Empress tree plantation in Plains, Georgia, and just last month I got to sit beside him in church and hold hands and sing Amazing Grace, and I kind of didn't know which planet I'm on because I'm in Canada, to sit beside an ex-president of the US and to talk to him about Empress trees and the difference they made was a real privilege for me to be able to do that. Not only that, but we asked Jimmy Carter if he would be willing to sell us the lumber on his plantation so that we could create the value for the lumber that there is for this particular tree in the world. And he said, yes, we could do that. So we're going to harvest his plantation of trees and build some beautiful products and have some fun with that. So it truly does grow here and looks beautiful. I have my face up against one of his 12-year-old Empress trees on the side. I don't know if you can see it, but it's quite a large tree. We've got some beautiful samples of Empress wood and how light it is to get shipped around the world, and the different countries around the world that love and value this particular wood, so there's a beautiful market for it. There's Wendy with one of Jimmy Carter's trees on his plantation, and this lady next door to her is Jill, and she's Carter's right-hand lady and makes decisions with him, and she's going to support us in that, harvesting the lumber on that plantation. And that is the end of our World Tree Carbon Offset Program presentation. I just want to thank you for taking the opportunity to let us share that with you. If we can make a difference for you in your area around finding farmers and connecting, that would be lovely. And thank you. Appreciate that.
And then I promise my man that they'll take the first shot at it. First opportunity, not the first shot. And microphone. Take it. Right there. To the left, to the other left.
My question was more towards Al.
Sure.
And it just, I was curious if you invited some of the other people in the city, Office of Resilience, West Side Summit, and other people to come to this group.
We did.
Um,
Go ahead.
And just because I've been to some of the other meetings around, and there's a lot of good stuff going on, there definitely needs to be more. But it's kind of amazing that what's happening in Crockett Creek, how it will turn out, wait and see. But I was just curious what response you got from the city and some of these other groups.
When we invited them, the response they gave to us was, Al, we can come and make a presentation at any time. But we're not interested in coming out and making a presentation. What we're interested in is responding directly to the community stakeholders. So if you would be so kind as to whatever comes out of the group, let us know what that is, so that we can come out and respond and build partnerships with the people who were in that room. Because we have been getting, we the city, have been getting a lot of criticism for coming out, making presentations, dumping our projects, and dumping our agenda. The mayor has asked us not to do that. So what we're gonna do, that's why we're taping this. Today was more like a taping day than anything else. Your questions, your comments, your inclusion. We're going to make this available to you. And we want to use forums like this to shape the public policy of government, to shape the public policy of the philanthropic partners who are funding a lot of stuff in the Crockett watershed basin. And we want to pull together community benefit agreements to develop our community. And we want to start from what's in here. So they asked us if we would allow them to not come today, but to look at what's been communicated and then set up a session for them to come out specifically respond to that so that we can ask them questions, point out what's not working, and then design that session so it can be useful to the community. That was their communication to us, and we accepted their request. Questions for Andrew?
Yes, I have a question about the trees. Actually, several. My name is Chris, and I'm not a farmer, but I've been gardening for a very long time. And I just want to clarify, we're talking about Paulownia tomentosa?
Really great that you asked that. Paulownia trees have 27 different species. You all know maple trees, right? Not all maple trees are invasive, but there is one called the Paulownia tomentosa that has an invasiveness to it, and it's in the invasive species list. There are other species of Paulownia called elongata, fortunei, cowpalmy, and those are the non-invasive species of Paulownia. And World Tree does not plant with our farmers the tomentosa.
Terrific. The next question, and I'm so glad to hear that. The very first page on Wikipedia says, quote, exotic, persistent, invasive. But that's a different species. So,
Yes.
Next question, you keep mentioning that it's a hardwood tree, but your suggested uses are non-structural.
Yeah, it's the softer of the hardwoods. So oak being harder than maple, being harder than alder. Empress wood is the softest of the hardwood trees. but it's strong. It has a strength to weight ratio that's high. So it's a lightweight hardwood that's stronger than most softwood.
But it's not used structurally.
Hi, I'm Wendy Berkman, I'm the CEO of World Tree, and I'm happy to be here today. And if I could, I'd just like to add a little more to what you've just said. Empress trees are actually 30% stronger than pine, which you would use in construction grade lumber. But if you were building a house or a building, you wouldn't put oak studs in your walls.
We used to.
I hope you didn't put anything over top of that. So if that answers your question, it's cost prohibitive.
Okay. My last question, you had mentioned it is a nitrogen fixer, so this is a leguminous tree?
Yes, it,
That's wonderful.
Yeah, the roots will put nitrogen back into the soil. Sean's going to pass around a piece of the board so you can see how light it is. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sophie Williams, and I'm representing my own farm. Good afternoon. I'm Tiffany Williams, and I'm representing Legacy Gardens, which is my own new farm, and it's a pleasure to be here today, and I've gained a lot of access. So as a farmer, how could one get involved with your program?
So wonderful. Thank you for asking. So you get a hold of World Tree. We've got our business cards here. We'll send, we need the geo coordinates of your property so that we can see that the elevation and the water tables are properly. And if that works, you can start with a trial package, which is 1 acre of trees, to try them and see if you like us and we like you as a farmer, and that we can work together. And usually the program, when someone's getting the trees from our investors, you need 20 acres of trees. You have how many? I so want to talk to you after this show. I want you to know our goal is to plant 3.5 million trees within the next 5 years, and then 1 million trees a year after that. So we really need farmers, and that's what keeps the program going. So
I have access to 300 to daily property, but that's, you make money on that.
you can make money. Yeah, thank you. We'd love to have a conversation. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much.
we actually have an incentive program. If you know of somebody who has a lot of farmland and you introduce them to us, you actually make $25 an acre for every acre they put in program.
Okay, I don't have any farmland, but when it comes to planting seeds, I decided a while back not to throw away my seeds, buy some ground, plant some seeds at that. So, but prior to Al, how you doing? Great presentation, and to both of you, everybody up there, y'all doing great. So what I wanted to say was, when it comes to ideas of having resources, who am I to notify to help out?
Your question points to like, who are you?
And that's the Proctor Creek.
Proctor Creek, yeah. Question points to who you notify, who you get in communication with, and so forth. So there's different stakeholders in Proctor Creek. You know, folks like to refer to me as the guy who's great about stuff from the neck up. Like talking about data and processes and involvement. But there's other folks in the room who are the hands-on folks. So one of our partners is the Proctor Creek Stewardship Council. There's a guy who jacks me up all the time to say, listen, man, you got to talk about something else other than this data. Is Tony Torrance over there. And then the other guy who's a partner, Daryl, says, not only do you have to talk about something else, you got to come out and get your hands dirty. So they are the Proctor Creek Stewardship Council. He's sitting right across from you, and his name is Daryl. He's actually the ambassador. So he's the guy that we depend on to get folks like yourself involved in ways that I can only talk about. How about that?
Great.
Take care.
Been friends with Daryl for years.
Well, there you go. Okay.
Hi, yeah, I'll introduce myself this time. I'm Steve Williams, I live in Southwest Atlanta, but I promote water conservation and rainwater harvesting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work get more of that done in Proctor Creek. My concern is the water requirements for the trees.
Yes, absolutely. Empress trees will survive on 52 gallons a year, and that's it. Although you don't want them to survive, you want them to thrive. But because of the humidity content here in Georgia, in the first season of planting them, you don't need irrigation, but you will probably need a water truck to be able to just water them as you first planted them. And they seem to absolutely love just the humidity. They have a really strong tri-tap root system that will actually make its way immediately to the water, and it gets what it needs from the water table once it's been planted with their first tap. Yeah, a tri-tap, yes.
The other thing that I didn't mention to you that would make a difference, what's awesome about Empress trees is when you cut them down and harvest them, they regrow back from the root system and they have 7 generations. So you want to know that the first time we share the profits of this lumber with our investors and with the farmers, the future generations, those trees and those roots belong 100% to the farmer for any generations of harvesting that's coming out of them after that. So you don't go in and replant and reseed your trees.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to clarify, ask a clarifying question. So we're in an urban setting. Is the opportunity that we're presenting for urban farmers specifically, and for some way that this process helps to create maybe local wealth building opportunities through this investment opportunity? Because I want that to be explicit. Is that what this presentation
That's
addresses?
correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Olivia Taylor. I'm a lifetime resident of Atlanta, and my heart is on the west side. There's a lot of development that's going to be going on, is going on now, and is planned. Some of that is affordable housing areas. I'm not sure about the others, the ones I'm concerned with are affordable housing areas. What can we do as we develop property to plant those trees in the community where we're building houses? Because a lot of the land gets cleared, has to be so it can be graded properly. Or does it have to be planted by the acre?
The particular program we have now is for the purposes of farming trees for timber. That's correct. It doesn't mean that Pearl Tree would not consider a development program to plant trees to make a difference where trees came out. We've got the founder and CEO here, and that's who owns the company. That's something that we would definitely have a conversation with her about. And it's not the current business model or the plan that we have that's in play right now.
Last night, having dinner with Sean and Al, it was one of the conversations inside the Proctor Creek project. Wouldn't it be great to actually have Empress trees all the way along the, and, you know, so the reality is in 10 years though, we would have to come in and harvest them, but they actually grow back 20 feet tall in the same year. So, and it could work out that 50% of the revenue of that can go inside a fund. Like, we're open to having a conversation about how we can bring this to your community as well as the, you know, the rural communities. So I'm open to that conversation.
I also want you to know that I didn't have an opportunity to share is Empress trees blossom in the 3rd year. They have beautiful purple blossoms on them. They smell like jasmine and vanilla. They're an organically grown tree, and honeybees love the blossoms on this tree. So you can actually bring some beauty and love up our bees at the same time.
When, and then the next take.
Thank you. My question is a follow-up to Daryl's question. So his question was, is this for us here in the urban area? And I think you kind of answered that, but you said you need 50 acres minimum, and I.
20 acres minimum.
And actually,
And actually, we'll even consider 10-acre minimum if in your neighborhood there's other people that are close by. We just want to have 20 acres so it's financially viable for us to bring in the harvesting equipment at the time. If we've got 10 acres here, maybe 5 acres there, if just a mile down the road there's another 5 acres. So you can actually get together as a community and say, we've got 10 acres, we've got 20 acres, we've got 30 acres, and someone over here only may have 5. So we'll look at that whole project.
When you and Bruce take just a minute to share with people about the kind of stuff you're talking about in that community in particular, so we can get a better flavor. Yeah.
This is Harold Ward.
Harold, I'm sorry.
I mean, this is Bruce Ward, that's my brother. There's a lot of us. What was the question?
So, go ahead.
You can talk about Collier Heights and the Community Association.
I'm Harold Ward, the president of Collier Heights Community Association, which you're in. This is.
Oh, I know the host, Harold.
Which you're in the Collier Heights neighborhood. We're a historic district. We've been a historic district for 5 years. And we would like to join in Proctor Creek, even though our base is Sandy Creek. But we adjacent NPU H and J, right? So what happens?
Gwen just made the argument, we better bring the Sandy Creek and Utoy Creek.
Yes.
Don't throw us out of the county.
But our community, we're here to support. We want to actually help in the development of this corridor. I've been active in the corridor as a board member for the tax allocation district. Thank you so much for letting me speak. I didn't know I was going to have this.
We didn't need it, but you were in the chair. You got the
But
chair.
also, congratulations, you're doing a great job, and I would love to continue to work.
And what I would like to say, and thank you, Al, for this opportunity. What Al said is true to the root and important to me, is that collaboration. If we are going to be successful as residents on the northwest side of town, the different nonprofit organizations, the different NPUs, and the different community leaders are going to have to come together and collaborate. To that end, I'm an environmental justice person, I'm a public health person. My background is brownfields and childhood-led poisoning and sustainability. That is what I do for a living and how I make my living. I've had an opportunity to partner with the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, which is under Health and Human Services. I explained to them some of the work I was doing on a small grant that I have with Emory University here in the community, and also the work that I'm doing just around Collier Heights and Donnelly Hollow. And the fact that we have a lot of brownfields, and they said we have a pilot that we're doing in 10 districts around the nation. And so Donnelly Hollow was the area that I told them that I wanted to work in. And they have a toolkit that for each one of the individuals that Al was talking about, the planners, the municipalities, the community leaders, the public health individuals, and the environmental individuals. Because, and each one of us says, how do you address land reuse as it impacts your health? So when we talk about development, a lot of times development does not talk about health, which is what is most important to me. Because everything that's here, coming down this corridor, that is environmentally detrimental to the health of the residents, has been environmentally detrimental for years. And so now, decades, thank you. And now we're talking about redevelopment. Well, it has impacted the health, and that data has not been captured. How it has impacted the health of our residents. Now, it's not just, do I have asthma, do I have heart issues, it also is mental health. Because we have to come out of our houses and walk down the street every day. And this has now become the norm for some people. And it's not normal. It's not normal. And as development happens, this model actually says all of us come to the table. So February 14, 2018, we had people from ATSDR, people from the environment, DNR, Department of Natural Resources, people from EPA, we had seniors from our community, residents from our community, we had people from Georgia Interfaith Peace and Light. At the meeting, we had people from Chicago and people here to talk about what is happening in this area and how can we implement this toolkit, which is why we also had Agnes Scott College partner with us, and we came up with some ways to identify brownfields in the community. So last month, an email went out. It went out to several people that are here in the room, NPU leaders, residents, because it was pointed out at the initial meeting that we could not focus just on Collier Heights.
Right.
Because brownfields are on both sides of the street. And people live on both sides of these streets. And we need to look at it as an encompassing. We need to look at NPUH. They're not always invited in the conversation. And I'm so happy with all the funding that Copper Creek has. I want to go on record for that. There's a ton of funding out there available. And this model also looks at that. But what's most important is the voice of the community members at the initial stage.
Right. Well, to your point about collaboration and voice is where we want this conversation.
And we would like to collaborate. So the pilot is in existence, and we would love to collaborate and bring all of these voices together to see how we can make sure, as you said, that policy reflects and that the MPUs do have a voice. But I do submit that it's not waiting about the time when developers come to the meeting and say, this is the idea, can you get your approval? That is too late, and it doesn't have to be that. We have a 17-acre brownfield.
Let me get her question, Glenn, and then we come back to this.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, this is more of a statement. I'm Roulette Jackson, and I'm a project coordinator for Trees Atlanta. I know you were talking about just being involved in tree planting or how to get.
Well, stand up and tell us a little bit about Trees Atlanta so they can hear what
So Trees Atlanta was established here in Atlanta in 1985. Our main goal is to preserve the urban tree canopy here in Atlanta. So we plant right-of-way trees. We do trees in parks. I did a partnership in January for Trees and Gardens. So we provided free trees to plant in gardens as well. We also have expanded to Dunwoody, Doraville. But we would like to, partner up with many communities here in Atlanta to plant trees because we need trees to breathe. They're beautiful, shade. So I'm here for Trees Atlanta for partnership opportunities.
There you go. Thanks for coming too.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Any more questions for World Tree Technology before we go to the roundtable? Tony, and then we'll come back over here.
For me, I think it's great the work that you're doing, but the bigger challenge is how do you create jobs? Two, how many black organizations that partners with you? This is very important because we can put out there, okay, this is the work that we're doing, but we need all to be associated with black, white, Hispanic, Latino, whatever, in creating jobs. So volunteering only can be for those who can afford to volunteer, as you present, your work. But for those who need jobs, who may be here listening to say, okay, we can create about 100 jobs in the city if we plant trees. Is it all volunteering or is it economic opportunity that can be created, associated? I think that's what I'm proud of. Thank you very much.
With what we're doing inside of the investment, we are partnering with farmers of all race and color. And it's the farmers themselves. They have the workforce, that gets paid inside of the investment. And one of the reasons that we're actually here today as well is to share it in the opportunity so that farmers can say, I've got land, and we have incentives inside of the program so that the farmer doesn't bear all the costs. We've got some initiatives that we're working on to be able to have them be able to hire help, support. And although having said that, if you want to bring community awareness to what's going on, creating a day like Angela did on her farm on Vancouver Island, you know, we'll show up, bring, you know, the t-shirt, let's get everybody, let's get the press, let's get everybody involved. And granted, it's volunteer work, but it creates a community. And so, yeah, there is no distinction. And in fact, I'm gonna quote something here really quick. And it's actually Revelations 22:2. It says, the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. And all of our nations need healing with the lungs of the earth.
Amen.
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 I want you to know that the people that paid for the trees that went in all the farms in the southern US and Canada came and planted those trees. The investors did it for free because they cared enough to say, I'm going to pay money to have trees go in the ground, and we're going to come and help you plant. So you've got investors and people that have money that want to do this, and have them come and help you plant the trees. Let them volunteer. Yeah, and just create that wealth for the community. Yes. Here, and then we'll go to
Yeah, I'd like to just, okay, Neil Parody, a little bit from Cobb County. Sorry. But I'm also a registered professional forester from years ago from Maine. But I also want to put a shameless plug in here for a program we're doing with Operation Smart Move. If I could, on the 18th, we're going to be talking about jobs, Tony. We're having a training program that's 2 weeks and teaching people antimicrobial remediation, water remediation, where there's water damage, and odor control. So there's 4 certifications that someone will come out of. It's if you know of anyone, or if you're in an organization that has people that are looking for good paying jobs, come see me afterwards.
Councilmember. All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naima Gilliard, and I am a council person for the new city of South Fulton. So I am a little bit far away, but everything is connected, so I'm not really that far away. I have in my district farmers, rural area, suburban area, not very many businesses, and I'm being impacted by an environmental disaster only because it's warehouses that are being built immediately behind subdivisions. That is not where you do it because it results in air pollution, noise pollution, lighting issues, traffic issues, congestion issues, particularly when the infrastructure is not being changed. So, in order to be a good neighbor, and it is really difficult to do that under these circumstances, we need to do a lot of educating about environmental justice. And it seems that, I was trying to bring together an environmental justice forum, and I reached out to all of the organizations I could find, to the institutions of higher education that I could find. And out of nowhere came this. So everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
So now we are connected. We will be connected. We will partner. And we will deal with these issues. And it's not just the city of Atlanta where the development is going on. in some instances, it looks a little insane to me, but it's coming to us as well in another kind of way. And so you're really, really right. We are new. We don't have an in-people system. Are we going to have one? Because we need one, and it is going to work. And we will put the policy things in it that you talked about today. So I am so glad that out of the atmosphere came this, and I know this gentleman from years, and I know it's been at least 20 years since I've seen you, or more, or maybe, but nothing happens accidentally. That's all I'm going to say. I thank you. I have your information, which I will share with my farmers so that they can get in touch with you and maybe work something out. So thank you so very much. I am just so happy that I'm here.
Hello, my name is Louis Woodson. I'm from NPUB, Parks Chair, Park and Recreation Chair. I'm an environmental scientist and energy scientist. I was amazed at the piece of wood that was passed around, and my question was, where did that particular tree originate? I know not here in North America. But I have a comment also concerning environmental justice and whatever. There's places online where you can actually go and look at all the different hazard chemicals and things that are emitted in the air, and to talk about the environmental justice problem. I think what's important is that there is a sweet spot of sort of a trade-off that we're going to have to reach and bring some relationships in order to have proper jobs as well as have a clean community.
I really appreciate you saying that. I want you to know that you can find fossils of empress trees that were in North America before the Ice Age, and they are actually indigenous to North America, this tree, and they came back to the southern U.S. in the early 1800s when we traded with other countries. And the pods of these trees have fluffy stuff in it, like we use styrofoam today for packing porcelain, fine china, and dishes. So in Japan, the tree is called the kiri tree. In China, it's called the elephant ear tree. In Asia, it grows in plantation-based timber in Europe, Australia. This tree actually grows organically around the world in the right climates, and it prefers organic farming, and it doesn't like toxic chemicals to grow. It has the same pH balance as human beings do, and it's actually a really lovely, beautiful, environmentally friendly tree. And so there's no harm that's going to come, to your land. And it used to live here before the Ice Age, apparently, with the fossils they found. On the back of the 500 yen coin is a picture of the leaf of the empress tree on it. And they make beautiful lumber from the wood there as well. Thank you, Louis.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Dawkins, and I'm actually here representing the Atlanta Black Chamber of Commerce, which is a small business. But I also...
Madam said just a little bit about the Atlanta Chamber, the first Friday.
Well, I am actually one of the co-chairs of our Education and Workforce Development Committee. I have a small business, and actually, my small business is training in education. I came out of Clark Atlanta University, the Environmental Justice Resource Center, with a doctorate there. And so my passion is actually educating the community about all the things that we're talking about. I've been out of this for a while because I was actually traveling around the country doing training in companies. But my passion has always been with the community, so I'm reconnecting, and this is perfect. This is ideal. But with the Atlanta Black Chamber, what we're trying to do, we are a group of over 100 small businesses here in Metro Atlanta, and so we want to connect with the community. So that's my thing, is making sure that we stay connected, get connected, and this information about the trees, because of course we want to make sure that agriculture is a big part of what we do, and a lot of businesses, not just in the building part, but at the infancy level, which is the growing of trees. So I want to bring this information back to the Atlanta Black Chamber and say, hey, we have to get on this boat bandwagon as well, because we want to make sure that the small businesses are connected in every source that we can. We've been talking about making sure that the faith-based community is connected, because we're kind of just we're fragmented right now. And as you said, you know, with all that's going on, that's what's going to actually bring our community together. So I hope that once again that I can partner with some of you. I've been training for a number of years. Tony Torrance actually came out of one of my classes. So I want to make sure that, you know, I'm here as a resource as well, and I want to connect because we want to make sure that once again our small businesses are represented in all of this.
Say a little bit about First Friday.
Oh, our first Fridays on first Friday of every month, we talk about a lot of the things that are going on in terms of business. This past Friday, we had an awesome presentation by a couple of brothers that talked about branding, because what they're doing is they're helping to embellish our businesses so that we can become viable in terms of everything that we're doing, in terms of, you know, each person's individual business, because there are a lot of different segments that are represented through the businesses here in the Metro Atlanta area.
And I'd like, if you don't mind, I'd like to add a little bit of something to what Michelle said around the Chamber of Commerce. Of course, we're part of the Chamber on Vancouver Island. And a lot of the businesses, companies like to do business with companies who are being socially responsible for the environment. And when you as a company choose to embrace the carbon offset program, you know, you get something on your storefront that says our carbon footprint has been taken care of. So people go, oh, I want to do business with them. And then there's also individuals or companies that have said, you know what, maybe we should offer this to our employees as an incentive that's been there for a while. And, you know, people are looking at this as sometimes even as a retirement. In Canada, we have what's called an RRSP and a TSFA, which is a tax-free savings account. In the U.S., but that's just launching this last month, we have it's eligible for your 401k, and what's the other one? IRA. You know, so that's something that you can take a look at in your businesses as well, to be able to offer that.
I want you to spend on the MPUP chairperson, environment chairperson. MPUP is down Capitol Road, Carbon, starting from Bond Road and Cascade Road is a boundary of ours, and also Cat Creek property. I'm really interested in talking to you about your toolkit and what you're doing. We have a lot of environmental problems in our particular MPU. And that's when I first met Al. Because of the health risk, with the soil erosions, we have a lot of creeks in the area. It's a beautiful area because of the trees, but we do have a lot. I hope that from this, a network can be developed so that we can really interact with each other, get educated, get educated and network with each other and find out how we can help each other. Because we are all connected. We all have issues and we can't do it alone. We found that out in
Nataka, can I put you on the spot for a moment? She said, you know, Nataka is one of the people who has been at the wheel, so to speak, talking about networking. And then the challenge that comes with that.
I'm going to request that you use the mic so you get it on the recording.
So Nataka is one of the people who has been, you know, at the wheel talking about networking, and the challenges that come with that. So, you know, today's conversation was about environmental planning, how critical it is to stay involved, and then we have a presentation from World Tree Technologies about how decreasing the carbon footprint. So now, you know, the whole Proctor Creek watershed basin has been communication as, you know, a global destination. So where do we go from here? Like, everything points to planning, organizing. So Nataka, I want you to say just a little bit about how your organization got called to the table and says, look, we got to do some organizing with the board, do some capacity building. So I want our next step to be about capacity building. So as chairman of the board, can you say just a little bit about, how critical that capacity building component is so that everybody can have that drumbeat as we leave this session and create other sessions? Ha, 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 ha.
Well, you gave me the mic, so so thank you so much. And I just walked in from another meeting, so I apologize if I'm talking about things that have already been brought up. But I think, looking at some of the people in the room, I think we, know how critical capacity building is. And to follow up on the last MP was the environmental chair who was saying that we can't do it alone. I think that's something that, and I represent two organizations, the West Atlanta Watershed Alliance, as well as the Proctor Creek Stewardship Council. And WAWA covers the Proctor, Utoy, and Sandy Creek watersheds, and so I definitely want to connect with you from MPUP. We have worked with Community Improvement Association, headed by Tony Torrance over there in the corner, as well as Dr. Yummy Noiby with Eco Action to start the Proctor Creek Stewardship Council. And we've recently been working with Glenn Smith Watson from Collier Heights neighborhood and the CHARS organization to begin to put down some groups to develop a Sandy Creek Stewardship Council, and the Utoy Creek Stewardship Council is next. We've been talking with some folks from parts of MPUI and some of the other MPUs that are in the Utoy Creek watershed. And so I would say from our perspective, we're trying to kind of get down to the watershed level to do planning and to do, that education outreach that is so needed so that we are actively engaged at the tables where these decisions are being made that are impacting all of us. And WAWA started working in those three watersheds because we realized that we're all connected. They're just streets essentially that separate these watersheds from each other. And the pollution and some of those issues don't know any boundaries. So what's happening in Proctor Creek is happening in Sandy Creek, is happening in Utoy Creek. And so for all of these communities on the west side, northwest and southwest Atlanta, I think there's a lot that we can do to band together to share challenges and solutions, resources, whatever it's going to take to solve and address some of these issues, and to call other people to the table, whether it's the city or other municipalities or entities who need to be working collaboratively with us. So I'll just use this as an appeal to, help us build these councils up in Sandy Creek and in the Utoy Creek watershed. And let's get connected. Let's build off of some of the success of the Proctor Creek watershed, the Proctor Creek Stewardship Council. I would say that it's still definitely a work in progress. There's a lot more that we need to do. But as we're learning these lessons, we definitely want to transfer them to these other watersheds that are contiguous. They're touching each other. And so we're all clustered together on the northwest and southwest sides of this city. And I think there's a lot that we can do to push forward the change that we want to see, that is community-centered, that is, that we're driving it from a point of what our needs and interests and wants are in these neighborhoods.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. We had a lot of conversation about the neighborhood leaders, community leaders, small business leaders. There's a whole other realm called faith leaders. So, Brother Pastor, as the leader in several faith organizations and how that dovetails with the business community, how do we begin to take this conversation forward and then keep everybody at the table?
Thank you, Mr. Martell. I was going to say the same thing that Dr. Natasha said, so thank you so very much for making that. One thing I want to say before I answer your question, again, I want to congratulate Al Bartell. He's always been in the community. He needs no accolades. I want to make sure that we recognize who was in the room or who was in the room earlier. Ms. Ola Reynolds, I think she had to leave out, a longtime standing community leader. NPUG, Tony is here, Harold, Gwen, and I saw another NPU leader that is here also, but all of you who, and also Daryl, all of us who have been working tirelessly in the community for years, and to come together under this roof, I am faith-based, I am eternally grateful for you putting this together. Speaking on behalf of the faith-based community, about 20 plus pastors, Northwest Pastors Alliance, we believe that our partnership from the pulpit, our mouthpiece from the pulpit, coupled with the experience that I just talked about and all the resources, bringing that in one harness or one goose, we can really transform our community. And when I say our community, the beloved community that Dr. Martin Luther King, as well as Dr. Donald Lee Hollowell talked about in their quest for the beloved community. So here from 285 back to Northside Drive, we can rebirth those businesses, those churches. Believe it or not, those of you who are not tithers yet, believe it or not, the church is a business. And I know most of you, when you rode in, you looked around and you saw a very beautiful red and white sign out there, that if we don't get more support from what we're talking about today, that sign will be a reality. And most of you look at me like, what sign? Check it out when you leave. I won't say what it is. But what we can do moving forward from the faith-based platform, I will make sure I carry this message back to my colleagues, that we will speak in sequence in music. Well, all pastors like myself can't sing, but we will step toe-to-toe with you and all these leaders that we just talked about, making sure that we're going to work hand in hand in this community.
Yes, the tree here we're talking about, express tree, what's that tree? Empress tree. This empress tree, it feels real light. I know I felt it before, and I believe you mentioned where some cultures use casing or shipping, what have you, historically. And that's what I kind of relate to, maybe boxes I picked up before. Where is this, we're in Georgia now, but where is this tree besides Georgia here, Atlanta, would be the best environment or some other environments? Is Alabama a good environment?
Alabama is an excellent environment. Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, the tree is semi-tropical. So if you were to give us a call in zone 7 to 11 on the agricultural scale, zone 7 to 11 is the best place for it. And if you're not sure, call us and say, this is my zip code, and we'll tell you if you're in the right zone.
Okay, then another question that I'll get the full answer on. First Friday, place and time on First Friday? BB&T, Atlantic Station, on the 4th floor. You want to say it?
Currently, our First Friday meetings for the Atlanta Black Chamber of Commerce is at the BB&T Atlantic Station on the 4th floor conference room at 11 o'clock. 11 to 1.
Monica, can we get you to welcome everybody to West Fulton County?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica Robinson. I'm the Fulton County Board of Health, and welcome. I'm pleased to be here, and just as an echo of what's been said today, that collaboration is going to be very important. And as a representative from the Director's Office with Performance Management and Strategy, and specifically coordinating the Environmental Justice Program, know that we are here, and we are actually, previously we were Fulton County Department of Health and Wellness. We're now Fulton County Board of Health. So we're doing a little bit of reorganizing. We're looking at our processes, the partnerships that we have. And so we have now a partnerships director. And so we are now going back and looking at how we can engage communities and really address the needs at hand. And as the things that have been brought up as it relates to housing, jobs, all the issues, transportation, the things that we're exposed to. All of those things have to do with health. So we're here, I'm here as you need to be partnered, have a partner, whatever's needed, and that we can do, know that we're here, and we can do what we can to move this thing forward.
Good afternoon. I just want to say thank you. I'm Jewel Johnson. And I've been a long-time community activist for many years between Atlanta and Fulton County. And I just want to say thank you for whoever sent me the email to be here. And I've known Al for many, many years. And he can tell you I've been between the city of Atlanta and Fulton County working for many years. And I've worked with Ms. Gilliard for a long time with environmental issues. Right now, I'm very, very interested in what's happening with this. This has truly enlightened me and put me back on track to where I've always been. I'm a lover of the community because in order to really care and be dedicated and committed, you have to love where you live. And I've been in Fulton County practically all of my life. My adventure into the community started with Atlanta Missing and Murdered Children because I had small kids at that particular time. And it just gave me the incentive to really look at what was happening and really fell in love with where I was and what I needed to do. And I'm here today to say that I'm still committed, and I'm looking forward to working with many of you. My doors are always open. I also have an organization that I work with, started and work with. It's called Women of Change, and what I do is help homeless women and children. We have a very serious problem in Fulton County and all over the state of Georgia, really. So we really do need to collaborate with each other and work together. And that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Okay. I want to move to the next phase of the evening because we're getting closer to the 4 o'clock hour. We're going to have some refreshments. But I wanted some acknowledgement to happen and an appreciation for people before they leave. But the first thing I want you to do is give our Canadian partners a round of applause. So you want to make a closing of this part so we can move to the next part?
Absolutely. Thank you for Al for bringing the World Tree to Atlanta and for being a part of this meeting today. Really touched and inspired by what everybody in this room has touched. It's touching, and I can't wait to go back. I'm so glad this is on film. And I would like to say that we didn't have an opportunity to hand out our half sheets or brochures or anything like that. So before you leave, please come on over, grab a brochure, get what you need. But thank you so much for inviting us here today.
Thank you very much for being here. I wanted to just say that in the room there are extraordinary human beings. Inside of we're ordinary human beings, and when we put ourselves forward to make a difference that's bigger than ourselves, we truly are extraordinary in the face of being ordinary human beings that can move the planet and can make a difference for our children's future and our generations to come. And it matters what you do today for our future on our planet. So thank you for being people that care about that and making that kind of difference in the world. Thank you, Al. Appreciate you for that.
Well, you can't bring people to the house without properly acknowledging them and appreciating them. So I got one of the best acknowledgers and appreciatorettes in the Southeast region of the nation. So Erica, introduce yourself and then acknowledge these folks in ways that we can't even possibly get into a man.
Hello, everybody. I am Erica Hill. I'm a financial empowerment consultant, and I wanted to come today to just give everybody a proper acknowledgement, just for taking time out of their busy schedule to be here and to say you matter. I don't know if everyone is present to what actually happened in the room today, but today we created a possibility for leadership in its unquestionable birthright for all of human species. So I just wanted everyone to get present to what was actually created today in this room. And also to give a special acknowledgement to Reverend Larry Hill, Olivia Taylor, and the other members of the U.S. as well as Canada in the Environmental Planning Summit Committee, Laura Fuller at the United Nations Environment Program North America, Stephen Gaid, member of the Sailors for the Sea, the Georgia Tech and Atlantic Station, those of ATT and the efforts and support of the National Team for Special Events, the leaders of the Tree Technologies, Angela and Wendy, along with Sean Behrman from Canada, the chairman of the Global Environment Network, which was Mr. Al Bartel, the production team, and the people from North Carolina, South Carolina, Chicago, and Atlanta, as well as the City of Atlanta government and the Atlanta City Council. And everybody that was actually in this room, everybody that shared, everybody that had questions, we want to say thank you so much, and we appreciate your time, your efforts, and your abilities just to say email. Thanks again.
Okay, sports fans. Today was an opportunity to consider that even though we're on the west side of the city, where a lot of things has not happened, and we have a lot of challenges, that doesn't mean that we're in a less committed. So we put together an environmental planning summit to begin to look at how do we go forward and guarantee that we have a seat at all tables. And so we want to do that in connection with United Nations World Environment Day, because Atlanta has been tapped as a global destination. And so it is time for us to think globally and act globally. So you want to stay tuned. We're going to do a lot of these kind of sessions because we want to impact the mandate the government has to put in place for citizens' inclusion, citizen participation, and citizen involvement in the public policy process of America. You should give yourselves a round of applause for kicking this off.
We've been sitting for a long time. Probably the stretch would feel really great, maybe get more food, but I have one really important request. First of all, I'd like for everybody to just acknowledge Al again for initiating all of this over a year ago and having that connection with the United Nations for us. Please give him a round. And secondly, I'd like if everybody who feels so moved to come forward so we can get a still shot of all of you with the proclamation. Does that work for everybody? Just a quick photo shot before everybody starts moving around and going anywhere. So all those that are so moved, would you please come forward so we can take a still shot? Thank you.